Take you to the air. I'll show you what it.
Shut up.
Excellent.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Chris here, alongside my good friend, colleague, co-host,
Ruben Borges.
And this is episode number 14 of TTS.
Right.
Guys, welcome. Thank you so much for your recent support, your comments, your posts, for reaching out to us and asking us questions. We really appreciate it. It means the world to us. So thank you for everything. And I hope that we could just make this show better for you and we just keep on growing this thing.
We've had a lot of good questions, and I think it leads up to what today's episode's about, Coach. What do we got?
Yeah, so a lot of you guys have been asking about nutrition and what do I eat, what does Ruben eat, and we covered a lot of this stuff on last week's episode on Ruben's competition prep and what's going on, but we want to dive a little bit deeper into this today. So a little bit more on the nutrition side, we're going to discuss how to get abs, right? A lot of people want to get their body fat down to a point where they have shredded abs. So what we wanted to do today was give you a blueprint on how to actually get your body fat down low enough to the point where you could see abs, right?
Now, would you give this to the person who's already kind of been training, Coach, or this could be someone who's never touched a weight?
Let's just lay the blueprint down for what anybody will need to do to accomplish it, right? Like here it is, here's the blueprint. If your goal is to get shredded abs, you can follow this blueprint and absolutely accomplish it, right? So let's get it right into it. And let's talk about like the meat and potatoes. Like, what do we need to do? All right. Well, first of all, you need to be doing strength training at least 2 days a week. I would say 2 to 4 days a week.
Yep.
Okay. So whatever fits your schedule and whatever else you're doing in addition to your strength work. So 2 to 4 days per week.
Building muscle will help you burn off more fat, and that's common. We just don't realize that.
And we'll cover that a little bit deeper too, right? But if you're training 2 days a week, you should be doing 2 full body sessions, okay? If you're training 3 days per week or 4 days per week, you have a little bit more of room to play with here, right? So if you're doing 3 days a week, you can do like an upper, lower, and full body split. You could take a 4-day training routine and split it up, upper, lower, and then just cycle through. You know, if you're doing days 1, 2, and 3 on the first week, the next week you would do day 4, day 1, day 2, very similar to what we do here. If you're training 4 days a week, you could do an upper, lower. You could do upper, lower, full. But the idea is to make sure you're training with a purpose. Make sure you have definitely a level of strength training and a program in place where you can make progressions. Because like you just mentioned, Rube, the amount of lean muscle mass that you have on your frame is going to dictate your metabolic rate, right? So muscle is actually metabolically active, so that means it's going to burn calories, right? So the more lean muscle that you have on your frame, the more calories you'll be able to burn even at rest, right?
A little advanced tip on the 4-day training day for guys who've been training for a while. You can do an upper, lower, let's say upper, and your day 4 could be on certain weak points that you just want to work on more or enhance more. Maybe you want to build more muscle in your quads, maybe it's your shoulder, and you can even treat that day 4 as like improving your weaker qualities.
Right. And I don't want this to seem like we're getting off topic here because, like I said, your goal is to build muscle. So if you want, when you're in the gym training, you don't want to just be doing circuits of, trying to do battle ropes and running around the block and just doing this, I don't want to say high intensity stuff, but you don't want to be doing this stuff where you're just getting your heart rate up, jacked up through the roof, right?
Build a foundation, get strong, start losing that fat. That's going to aid in what we're talking about, getting nice, lean, shredded abs.
So let's just say that you are somebody who's healthy, somebody who's been training, right? What I would suggest is that you do 2 higher intensity days, right? And 1 day lower intensity. right? So like a low intensity, steady state cardio, 1 day a week. So
I was gonna say, Coach, what would be an example of a high intensity day for someone that's just going to an elliptical or something?
Right. So, well, let's even go a little bit further, so we give everybody at home like a clearer picture here. So, high intensity interval training is where you're going to do a high intensity phase for a period of time, followed by a lower intensity phase, right? So, there's different ways that we can go about that. You can put together a little bit of a circuit where you can do battle ropes, jump rope, mountain climbers, that type of thing, right? You could do sprint work where you're sprinting either bleachers on the flat ground, on a hill, right? Or you could even take it over to a piece of cardio equipment like you just mentioned, right? Like elliptical or a bike. And then you could do a higher intensity phase. Let's just say, a 3-to-1 rest or lower intensity ratio to a higher intensity ratio. So, for instance, if you were on the bike, right, you could go 90 seconds at like a good steady pace, and then crank up the intensity and really do a full sprint for 30 seconds. And then you could go back to 90 seconds lower intensity, and so on, right? 90 seconds low. You could even do 3 minutes low to 1 minute high.
And just make sure when you're doing it, I mean, cut you off, Coach, the RPM, see how you are at that full speed, and try to keep that pace as you keep going your high interval phase. Keep the RPMs high.
Yeah, and so those are a couple of examples of what you can do, and that. You don't want that to go super long. You don't need to beat yourself up for an hour doing high intensity stuff. You know, anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes, I say, would be ideal when it comes to fat burning. So we got those high intensity days in at least twice a week, right? The lower intensity day, that could be when the weather's nice, going for a swim. It could be going for a hike. It could be going for a bike ride. Just lower intensity. It doesn't have to be super high. Keep your heart rate somewhere between 110 and 120, you know, something along those lines. And just keep a good solid pace. Keep the blood flowing. And think of this as like more of like an active recovery day, right?
Like active rest, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Would you throw even jump ropes in there?
Yeah, you could jump rope, just like a steady pace for 10 minutes or something like that. Just think of it as active recovery, though. So something that's low impact, where you're not beating up your knees or your hips and really beating yourself into oblivion, right? So we're going to do that at least once a week. Now, one little tidbit here for the low intensity, steady state cardio stuff. Going for a fasted walk every morning, it's great for recovery. You can do it on days that you're training. You can do it on days that you're doing the high intensity stuff and the low intensity. You can do it every single day, and I suggest that you do it every single day. Just a good fast-paced walk from 15 to 30 minutes. Throw your headphones on. It's a great way to start the day. It's a great way to burn body fat without sacrificing any of that hard-earned muscle that you built as well.
Especially take advantage as the day gets nicer. We head towards the spring. I enjoy doing my cardio outside. Enjoy the weather. I mean, it just makes you feel better. You enjoy your cardio session a lot more.
No doubt. Yeah, for sure. Get outside, get some sunlight, get some vitamin D, right? So now that's your base, right? We need to have that stuff in place. We talked about recovery and the importance of that on a past episode, right? So sleep is very, very important when it comes to burning fat, right? When you sleep, you're going to produce more anabolic hormones like testosterone and human growth hormone, which could help build muscle mass, right? So without adequate sleep, your fat loss process is going to suffer a little bit. So make sure you're getting those 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night in.
And it's quality sleep, because I've mistakenly done this too at times where, I'll get early, it's hard for me to get into that deep sleep, and there's a difference between just closing your eyes for 8 hours or resting and not really hitting your deep quality sleep until maybe later on. You end up only getting actually 4.5 quality hours of sleep. So that's something, if you have trouble with it, work on it. And I know you spoke about it past episodes, shut your phone off, shut the TV off an hour before going to bed. It helps in hitting a deeper sleep sooner.
Yeah, making the room pitch black, blackout curtains. setting the temperature around 67 degrees, keep it nice and cold in there.
As long as you're not afraid of the dark.
Yeah, like you. We had issues with that. You had the night terrors they call it, right, Coach? So,
Nightlight.
he has the Rock nightlight.
Oh, come on. That's actually pretty cool.
So, what was I saying? So, yeah, your conditioning is in place now, your sleep is in place, your training is in place. Okay, so now we have exactly what you need to do, right? But let's talk about nutrition. So we know, we've been preaching for quite a while, you know, the most important thing is that you remove the shit and you focus on the good stuff. All right. So what are the two main things that you want to cut out of your diet? Anything with processed refined sugars, anything with flour, so any type of processed carbohydrates, right? We want to, yes.
I was going to say, what do you think are the main sources of the flour and sugar that most people just always indulge in?
All right, so look, sugar is in a lot of places that people will, you know, their coffee, these crazy drinks that they get at
juice,
Starbucks.
like,
Well, no, like the Starbucks drinks, those friggin' milkshakes that people call coffee, right? Avoid all that stupid shit. Candy, of course, bread, when we're talking about flour.
Very common. I think a lot of people.
Bread, pastas,
so much bread.
Cakes, right, pastries, right, all that stuff. So we want to get all the sugar, the flour out of there. We're also going to want to remove any of those low quality vegetable oils, corn oils, that type of shit. Get all that crap out of there. Okay. So now, that means we're focused on what we call earth-grown nutrients. So anything you could hunt, catch, kill, pick from the dirt, fruits and vegetables, right? Those are all earth-grown nutrients. That's what we're going to base our diet around. Now, excuse me. When it comes to someone really getting lean enough to the point where they're going to see visible abs, in my opinion, and one of my favorite approaches here is carb cycle approach, and we've mentioned that before.
Yeah, the last episode we were talking about.
We touched on it a little bit, right? So let's dive a little bit deeper into what that actually is and how that's going to work for you. So a carb cycle means that we're going to have days where we're going to have a lower carbohydrate intake, which is going to put us in a caloric deficit, meaning you're burning more calories than you're taking in. Okay? That's the key to fat loss, right? We need to be in a caloric deficit. However, like we mentioned earlier, the key to sustainable fat loss is the amount of lean muscle mass that you have on your frame, right? So if you put yourself in a caloric deficit for too long and you're training, you're doing all this stuff, right? That could end up to you potentially losing muscle mass, which is where the significance comes into play of working in a higher carbohydrate day. So now you have a couple days low carbohydrate in a caloric deficit and then a higher carbohydrate day. The types of foods that you're consuming, they should not change, right? You should still be eating earth-grown nutrients. However, you're going to eat much higher calories on those high carb days. And Coach, you have anything you want to add to that?
And now an example, Coach, on the low carb days, what carbs should they be consuming?
Okay, so we're going to be avoiding sugars, we're going to be avoiding flours, right? So, and that's processed refined sugars. So, fruits, baked potatoes, sweet potatoes, rice, quinoa, oats. These are all examples. And there's also, of course, there's debate on whether grains are good for you or bad for you or whatever else. I personally don't have an issue with grains, except for oats, which I developed a sensitivity to over the years because I ate it every day for the last 15 years of my life. But that's going to be, in my opinion, individualized. So if you feel like you eat a bowl of rice and you just don't feel right afterwards, then don't cut rice out and then try a sweet potato or try a baked potato. So that's going to be dependent on the person.
And with that, those carbs, you're saying size them out, and those are what low carbs are on those low carb days. On the high carb days, eating those same meals, just a little higher value.
Yeah, for sure. Like if you like, just to keep this simple for today, right? So what I typically do is on a low carb day, and because remember I'm doing a lot of jiu-jitsu now and training, so I'm doing burning a lot more calories these days than I have in the past. In the past, I would have probably around 100 grams of carbohydrate on a low carb day. And then I would have about 200 grams on a high carb day. So basically doubling the amount of carbohydrates I consume, right? Nowadays, it might be like 130 to 150 on a low carb day.
And that's because his activity level is just so high.
Yeah, because I'm burning more, I'm doing more, right? So, and then a high carb day is around 250-ish.
Which is always an amazing day.
Yeah, it's like that back when I was eating oatmeal, that gigantic bowl of oatmeal would be like, eating birthday cake.
Especially after about 4 weeks in, you start really treasuring those high carb days.
Yeah, you start to have dreams and shit. But anyway, so that's how you're going to have the low days and the high days. So now, how do you do it? So there's different ways that you can cycle in low carb days and high carb days. For instance, if you're doing 3 strength training days a week, and then let's just say you're doing 2 conditioning days, which are high intensity, and 1 low intensity. On the 3 strength training days, maybe those are your high carb days, and maybe the other days of the week are your low carb days. That's one way you can do it. One of my favorite ways to do it, because it's just very efficient, is 3 days of low carb, and then every 4th day you cycle in a higher carbohydrate day. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, low carb. Thursday would be a high carbohydrate day. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, low carb. Monday would be a high carb day. And you just cycle through that way until you complete whatever total weeks that you need to complete. But remember, if you have a cheat meal, if you're really dialed in on this carb cycling process, a cheat meal is going to destroy the whole thing, all right? It's going to destroy your psyche and everything else. So if you're trying to get razor sharp abs, then you got to really be going strict for about 12 weeks or more, depending on how much body fat you have to lose. But if you're someone who's sitting around 20%, 18% body fat, it's probably going to be anywhere between 12 to 16 weeks of you dieting your ass off, cycling carbohydrates, to get down to that low body fat percentage where you can really see your abs.
So what Coach is saying, you got to lock it in, man. And you give yourself a frame, 8, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, whatever it is, stay true to it. Don't go out there giving yourself just a random meal there just because. Especially if you know you can handle it, because sometimes that's the part after I would say, Coach, maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks, start messing with your own head, and you start kind of having these urges, and that's when you got to dial back. That's where discipline comes in.
Right.
And that's the game changer of it.
Yeah, because especially early on, like now for you and I, it's second nature. But I don't know, you might be a little crazy and you start
once in a while, maybe my peanut butter kind of gets in there sometimes. I have to smack it.
But it gets to a point where it's just second nature, so you don't even think about it. But early on, I remember when I would first start dieting to get my body fat super low, and even like competing for physique in physique competitions and whatnot. You start to doubt yourself. You start to not doubt yourself, maybe second guess yourself, and start to question, like, why the hell am I doing this? What am I doing this for? Is it really worth it? You got to fight through those thoughts because the end result is certainly going to be worth it. So you got to stay dialed in. You got to stay sharp, and you got to just keep working towards the goal that you've created for yourself. Don't let those doubts come in and take you off track.
And I would say an example would be going into a place where I was a couple weeks ago where there's just pizza.
Prison?
All over. No. But there's pizza all over, and sometimes that smell, I feel like it turns into a hand, all that smoke, and it tries to grab you to just stay strong. And I think you've probably dealt with that. Being scenarios either at a party or an occasion, and it's just that one meal. For me, it's a pizza smell. It always gets me. And I'm like, and you just gotta stay strong, and that's all it is. That's when I started thinking about my high carb day coming up.
I remember once you masturbated with pizza. You want to tell the audience about that?
So, it's not true. I like pizza, but just not that much.
And then I saw poor Jonathan Borges eating the pizza.
Come on, don't bring him into this. Cardboard box out a hole in it. All right.
Anyway,
totally off topic.
Jonathan Borges. Sorry, buddy. That's Ruben's cousin, for those of you who don't know.
Awesome human, man.
So anyway, all right. So let's go back to this blueprint here, right? 2 to 4 strength training days per week, right?
Yep.
2 high intensity conditioning days per week. Okay? That could be HIIT training, that could be playing basketball with your friends, that could be doing jiu-jitsu, martial arts, right? Something that's high intensity and you're really sweating, you're really working.
And it's fun.
Right.
Not boring.
You're doing a couple days, whatever the gaps are, of low intensity cardio. So maybe 1 day a week, you go for a bike, you go for a swim, you go for a hike, whatever that is, that's your active recovery day, right? The other tidbit, the secret is 7 days a week, fasted walk, 15 to 30 minutes, first thing in the morning. Boom. All right? Now your diet. I'm sorry.
I have 2 things to add. I don't keep going. I'll just add to it right
Okay.
after. Go ahead.
Your diet, earth-grown nutrients, no sugar, no flour, no bullshit, no Gatorade, no orange juice, no sodas, no crap, period, okay? Carb cycling now, okay? So we're going to have lower carbohydrate days and higher carbohydrate days. That could look like 3 days of low carb, followed by 1 day of high carb, and then back to 3 low, 1 high, 3 low, 1 high, anywhere from a bare minimum of 8 weeks to maybe 16 weeks with no deviations or cheat meals whatsoever. It could also be high carb days on your training days and the rest of the days lower carbohydrate days. However you want to cycle it, but you have to put yourself in a caloric deficit more days than you're not in one. Okay, so just be mindful of that, be aware, and that's really what variation works best for you will be dependent on your activity level and what you're actually doing throughout the day and what feels best for you. But the most important thing there is that those ingredients, the foods that you're consuming, are clean and earth grown. And also, before you jump in there, Coach, sleep. Remember, sleep 7 to 9 hours per night, because if you're not recovering from your workouts, you're not getting good sleep, you're going to slow down the fat loss process. Yes, sir.
To go with that, something that can help also, a little tip. You should be having half your body weight in ounces, but that's also a factor in that hunger. Sometimes it cuts your appetite. Half your body weight in ounces in water. All right, you should be drinking continuously throughout the day, stay hydrated. Especially what I would have is after my meals, or maybe my non-carb meals, let's say I'm having chicken and veggies, anything of that sort, drink some water after. All right, and that is something that curbs your appetite. You're not as hungry. Plus, you should be drinking a lot of water. That'll help with your fat loss process and muscle growth.
And hydration. Adequate hydration. Bare minimum is half of your body weight in ounces of water daily. That's bare minimum.
Try not to even count the water that you put in your protein shake or anything else. Just have a separate gallon where it's only strictly water that you're drinking. Now, let's say it's 120 you're trying to reach, which I believe that's what a gallon is, 120 ounces.
28.
Drink that whole thing.
Yeah,
all right?
128.
Yeah, 128, almost. The other thing, Coach, for give an example for someone who's not sure of, let's say with the oatmeal, like how would you work your oatmeal, measure your oatmeal on your low carb days, and how would it look on your high carb days? Just give a nice example.
Let's
say when you were having oatmeal, now they're
so you got to look at the total amount, the total grams of carbohydrate you're having per day. Okay, so if I'm having 100 grams on a low carb day, my oatmeal might be about 25 to 30 grams of carbohydrate. So a half a cup of oatmeal is going to give me somewhere around 27 grams of carbohydrate. So that would be a half a cup in the morning on a low carb day. On a higher carbohydrate day, I'm going to double it, right, for the most part. So I'm going to have 1 full cup of oats.
And there's a good example of how
so that would be
low.
Right, that would be 27 versus 54.
54.
Right.
And the same thing goes with the rice and the potatoes, and the way you're measuring that as well.
Yeah, and that's going to be dependent on body weight, so that kind of goes beyond the scope of this episode. But for now, if your goal is to get razor sharp abs, get super lean, then just start applying this and just check your weight. Once a week, same day, same time, same scale. Visuals. Make sure you take a picture, look in the mirror, how your clothes fitting. Right. So, guys, that's the blueprint that we have for you. It's worked for me. It's worked for him. It's worked for hundreds of people that we've worked with over the years. It's going to work for you too. You just got to find the right twist, the right blend. And if you need more help with this, feel free to reach out to us. You can DM me on Instagram, Chris @Chris_Tutela, Tutela, or Ruben what's your Instagram handle?
DM me also at _Ruben, RUBEN_Borges, BORGES. Feel free to DM me any questions you guys may have.
Yep, or shoot me an email, Chris@tutelatraining.com, or just drop a damn comment on this video. We'll see it. Either way, Ask us questions. That's what we're here for. We're here to help, and make sure you stay away from Jonathan Borges' pizza.
Apparently, because it's gross.
That gets gross.
This is disgusting.
Sick kid. He's a sick kid.
Poor John.
Guys, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We will catch you next week on episode number 15 of
TTS Talk.